on the talkRADIO app.
The Independent Republic of Mike Graham on talkRADIO.
Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. We are going to save you the trouble of having to listen to any more of that ridiculous nonsense. I have to say, plagues of locusts in Florida underwater. Don't forget, this is Mike Graham on talkRADIO with the Veterans Railcard. Just a single day's service in the Armed Forces qualifies you for the Veterans Railcard. Visit railcard.co.uk to apply. Now, a couple of stories that we need to touch upon before we get to the end of the show, when Ian Collins is going to be here, of course. We're delighted to say we're joined by Georgia Gilholy, journalist and former president of the KCL Libertarian Society. One particular story, of course, is that it's now become a de rigueur to be giving out information on people who are supposedly, enemies of various different groups. The trans lobby have been out in force getting rid of a professor from down in the University of Sussex, and it's now being brought to the attention of the rest of the world because she's actually been forced out of a job as a result of supposedly some views that she had that they didn't like. Georgia, very good afternoon to you. Welcome.
Hi, Mike. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I'm not quite sure what to ask you about first, really, because I was wondering if you watched the start of that Boris Johnson speech. I wonder what you made of it. I mean, it all seems... People are saying it sounds a bit like Spinal Tap or one of those kind of weird cults that people go and join in to be told terrible things are going to happen if they don't behave in a certain way. And they're all sitting there wearing masks. It's quite sinister to me.
Yeah, I did see a little bit of it because I'm covering a bit of it today, but I think he compared at the beginning challenging the climate crisis to a James Bond film. I haven't actually watched any James Bond films, I'm sorry to say, but I think, I get the vibe of them, and I think it's a bit of a cringe-worthy comparison.
It really
I
was.
guess he's trying to appeal to popular culture. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, he's hardly like to appeal to anybody younger than about 50, because I'm not sure that many people under the age of 50 know what the hell he's talking about. But anyway, we live in very strange times, is all I know. What about this story, though, about Professor Kathleen Stock? Because she eventually was forced out of the University of Sussex in what I could only describe as very hateful scenarios, which were created by people there who were demonstrating on a daily basis about her.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think the issue of free speech on campus and the trans issue being a big flashpoint in that, it has become a bit of a cliche or a meme to say, oh, there's a crisis of free speech on campus, blah, blah, blah. But I think there are sort of tones to that, but it is clear that, there's truth to this. And I think her, resignation after being harassed by radical activists is quite chilling, to be happening in I guess you could call us a somewhat liberal society. We have human rights enshrined in law, blah, blah, blah. In general, most people are in favour of some degree of free speech. And obviously, academic inquiry should be the height of that. But unfortunately, it's not. And I think, someone like her as well, I believe she has quite a progressive track record. But she is not in favour of gender self-ID, which means, anyone who says that they identify as another gender is automatically allowed to go in single-sex spaces in the gender they now identify as. I think most people have, a variety of opinions on it. I don't think she has particularly insane views. I don't think she fosters a hatred of trans people. I think those two topics are two different things and people are conflating them. Though I've also been told that apparently this anti-TERF society that were harassing her only has 16 members.
Yeah.
So it's quite disappointing that people seem to be bowing down to this group when actually the people who are bothered to pay to be members or whatever
Yes.
are in a very minority.
But this seems to be the world we're living in now, Georgia, isn't it? Because, the same goes for Insulate Britain. They've got this small number of people go and disrupt the M25 and everybody has to not be able to do anything about it. And I mean, a lot of those people who were demonstrating in the University of Sussex as well were covering their faces up so they couldn't be identified, which seems to me to be entirely the antithesis of what they're demanding. But the thing for me that is so irritating about this story is that, as you say, she hasn't got particularly, dramatically, revolutionary views. It's just that people don't agree with her. And, surely that's the lifeblood, certainly of what I do, should be the lifeblood of any university where people are supposed to be challenging each other intellectually.
Yeah, I mean, I just think in general academia is quite a toxic environment. I think that there are more people than we think who have moderate views, and more more faculty who have moderate views than we think, and more students who have moderate views than we would think from obviously the media coverage. But the problem is that, you know, if you have three people who espouse these sort of radical views, sometimes inciting violence, as we've seen at Sussex, and everyone else is sort of scared to challenge them, then, you know, what's the point in talking about the silent majority? They need to be vocal, otherwise these things sort of become normality. And really, we're already in that situation where this is normal. This isn't the first case of this kind of thing happening. And, you know, I know the government has their free speech bill, which people have a variety of reactions to. They obviously presented that in the Queen's speech earlier this year. But I think whatever you do in terms of the law, this is clearly a grassroots cultural issue, because these ideas have filtered down from academia. They're now common, you know, to be seen on social media and in popular culture, even though, like I said, there are more people who have more moderate views than we think, probably the majority of people. But if these aren't the people who sort of I guess, directing the narrative, or who are not going to speak up because, I don't know, they have jobs, like Kathleen Stock did have a job,
right.
or they have families and things to do, you know, I don't know what situation we're going to be in, say, 5-10 years time. I can imagine it being better, whatever the government thinks that they can do. You can't just change, you know, people's beliefs by saying, okay, we're going to protect free speech on campus, because those people will still harbour, some of those people will still harbour the view that this professor deserves violence for her views.
Yes, quite.
Which is obviously ridiculous.
Well, the story today is that Lord Wharton, who's chairman of the Office for Students, says that scholars must be able to put forward views without fear, and he's saying that there's going to be new legislation coming in which will strengthen powers to address transgressions. So I don't quite know what he means by that, but I do know that the online safety bill is all part of this kind of thing as well, because apparently there's a possibility that people online who troll, and I know some of her enemies, if you like, would have been coming under this category, if they troll and cause psychological harm as a result of things that they're saying to people, they could face 2 years in prison. Now, normally a free speech advocate would say, well, that's probably not the right way to go. But unfortunately, we've reached this terribly toxic place, haven't we, where people are awful to one another on social media.
Yeah, I think when it comes to bills like this, you have to look at the bigger picture. So I think that if people are making direct threats, which is already, you know, illegal, they definitely should face consequences. But I think it's a mistake to broaden that definition and to put, you know, regular people at risk for making, you know, jokes or sort of criticizing people online, sort of, you know, the definition as well of psychological harm. How can that be appropriately evaluated?
Right.
How can we say someone has the, you know, criminal intent? But I think this kind of reaction to instantly think there must be a legal solution to this is sort of a consequence of, you know, the post-war consensus of, if there's an issue, the state must solve it, and, you know, there is no sort of other way to approach it, which I think is quite dangerous.
Yes,
but...
I agree with you, because I think it could actually backfire, because what they're apparently going to do with this proposed law change is shift the focus onto the harmful effect of a message rather than if it contains indecent or grossly offensive content. Now, you could say anything is harmful to you. I could say anything is harmful to me. You know, I could send a message to somebody and they could declare it to be harmful, and then I get arrested. I don't think that's a world we want to live in, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if someone were to, let's say, you know, you tweet this interview out and someone says, gosh, isn't that young girl annoying, which people sometimes do. And I could, you know, burst into tears, or, I don't know, suffer from depression or something like that because of those, you know, replies to me. But does that mean that someone else is a criminal for saying those things, for criticizing me? No, they're not a criminal. But in future, maybe they could be, because we're sort of broadening these definitions, and it's just incredibly vague and dangerous and counterproductive. Because let's say, you know, there are actual radical, you know, far right people, far left people online and in real life, you know, telling them to delete their Twitter account, fining them, is not actually going to change their beliefs. It's actually going to make them think that the so-called establishment or big tech or whatever and the government is against them, and it will actually embolden them if they truly do hold, you know, radical beliefs.
Well, that's right. And as far as Kathleen Stock goes, I mean, you can't really imagine another seat of learning in this day and age at the moment, anyway, under the current sort of conditions. Can't imagine another university offering her a job, can you?
No, I think because she's spoken out a lot and she has been brave in this situation, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if she got a job sort of in political commentary or maybe in a think tank. But if she spent, her whole life building this academic career, that's probably not where she actually wanted to be. She probably wants to be, teaching and doing research in a university. So I hope, she'll find something else to sort of support her and, I guess that fulfills her in life as well as paying her bills. But I think, I wouldn't be surprised if another university didn't offer a job in the UK because she attracts this controversy. And we know that, because she's sort of been all over the press with this issue, wherever she goes now in the UK, there's going to be protests. So I can't see this going away if she were to just, move to another university.
And then, of course,
they would even offer her a job.
Yeah, and the terribly dangerous aspect of the sort of collateral damage to all of this is that people who think they may agree with her will now probably not say it because they'll be scared of losing their jobs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm someone who is generally quite open with my beliefs. Obviously, I'm a political journalist, so I kind of have to be. But, there were times when I was a student or in certain social, meetings or whatever, you just feel like when you hear what they're saying, sometimes people you can tell they're so radical that, okay, is it even worth it to have this discussion right now? Because they're not going to change their mind just from me disagreeing with them. But I think in general, we obviously do need to permit these conversations. Obviously, platforms like talkRADIO do, other media outlets do, people do debate this, on Twitter and in real life. But I think in general, if you can feel outnumbered, you're less likely to speak out. Especially as, one person just arriving at university, you want to make friends, you don't want to be seen to be out of place. So unfortunately that happens.
Yeah. No, this is the way of things now, though, isn't it? I mean, just watching this climate change conference, the COP26, if you are in any way critical of what they're doing, if you refuse to actually acknowledge the fact that, flying in on Air Force One with 85 cars is not slightly hypocritical, if you don't see all these private jets flying in and using up more carbon than Scotland does in an entire year, if you don't see the ridiculousness of that, you're a good person because, you can't ask that question. You can't challenge them on that because they must meet to make this incredibly historic, ridiculous, pledge, which in the end will mean absolutely nothing. But everyone's almost like walking zombie-like through modern day life as though they don't notice any of this stuff and that they're too frightened to pretend actually that it's rubbish.
Yeah, I think obviously it sort of depends on the circles you're in. If you're on, an average street in like a town outside of London or wherever, and you have these conversations, most people, will be like, okay, whatever, this is a load of rubbish, but if you're among people who are of a more liberal bent, maybe more upper middle class at a university, wherever, it can be a little bit awkward to sort of say those things depending on if you know their views or not. Sometimes they can make their views quite clear, obviously, as everyone's entitled to. But yeah, when it comes to, I suppose, talking about some of the worst aspects of things like COP, I think I have seen a lot of people criticising it hard.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just despair. But listen, Georgia, thank you very much indeed.